We're back. Is this working? Storytime's back. We're back live. We are here, and we are so excited to be back for Storytime. This is episode 8, and for those who don't know, each episode is dedicated, as always, to a great moral, and this one is leadership, which is the perfect one. And the reason why we focused on this one is not just because of I Am George Washington, but also because of 9/11. Of course, that's the big day here. Let's make sure we're on. I think we're seeing people. It looks like the audience is building. And there we are. We're alive. I can see it. Okay, now I can see you. Now, so we all know that today is 9/11 and lots of 9/11 stuff that's going to be happening and on the History Channel later, and we'll talk about that as well. We are here, of course, to talk about I Am George Washington, to talk about leadership, because that's what we're going to talk about. And most important, though, again, let's do a little 9/11 business. This is one of the things for 9/11 that is, makes it personal for me is we lost our friend in 9/11, and I just want to honor her, Michelle Heidenberger, who was a flight attendant on the Pentagon flight. And years ago, when I was on a show, his sister, George C. Kane, a firefighter in New York City, his sister gave this to me and said, please put this on, think about him, don't forget him, don't forget my brother. And I never do. These two pictures sit on my desk every single day on the desk so I can see them. And we honor them and all those who were lost tonight. And in their honor, and dedicated to them tonight, we're going to read about George Washington. So here we go. I can see you're all out here. Brian, who says, I love your books in Decoded. And Christopher Woodley says, hi from London. I love that we're international now, people. And I'm buying all of these books for my son. Candace, you get extra love from me. And so does JJ, who says he's watching from a pub in Epcot. Yes, because there's drinking in Epcot. As far as I'm concerned, that may be the greatest place in the world. So, of course, never forget, we don't. And the reason I want to talk about leadership, and I Am George Washington, is this. And that is, I wrote this book and because I was looking at the TV, and my kids put on the TV every day, and you know what they see? They see politicians. And I'm tired of politicians. What I want to see are leaders. And we all know there's a difference between leaders and politicians. And I want my sons to know what a leader is. I want my daughter to know what a leader is. And I'm tired of politicians. I need more leaders in my life. So that's why I Am George Washington as a book exists. And leadership is not about being in charge. What it says in here, leadership is about taking care of those in your charge. So we're going to read this together. You guys all ready? Jen Hughes says she's reading along with our copy. Please start posting your pictures also of your kids on Storytime so we can see them and share them and see all the people out there that are reading with us. And we're going to read I Am George Washington. You guys ready for it? Or would you like to see a preview of this book? I Am Jim Henson. Oh, look at that. You didn't even know I got one. Yeah, that's right. I Am Jim Henson here. Am I going to read that to you with this awesome wig? No, I'm saving that for another story time. But maybe at the end, if you guys ask nicely, we can read a little part of it. Oh, I think that's a good idea. I'm so glad I thought of it. Okay, I Am George Washington. Now, by the way, if you know what this is, a square and compass, did I hide something like that in there for Freemason reference? Who just said that? Oh, maybe I did. Here we go. I Am George Washington by myself and Christopher Eliopoulos, the amazing artist who draws these pictures. I am George Washington. By the way, not only am I George Washington, someone asked, is this wig real? No, because it has a real ponytail, though. Yes, ponytail. Here we go. You ready? You know what one of the hardest things in life is? Being the first. When you're the first to try something new, there's no one to show you the way. But when I was little, I wasn't the first. I was the fourth of 9 children. I need my assistant now to hold up the book. Who's going to do it for me? As we read. You're going to hold this. Hold it up. Ready? Watch this. When you're the first to try something new, there's no one to show you the way. But when I was little, I wasn't the first. I was the fourth of 9 children. He's got all his brothers and sisters. You see them? It says, when I was really little, I lived at a place called Mount Vernon, which had a huge river running through the backyard, an unexplored forest in every direction. See that? And at 5 years old, this was the world I knew. If you wanted to explore the forest, you had to be the first one to go inside. And he says, you think you're brave enough to go in there, George? Not yet, but soon, he says. George Washington's getting strong. Now, this is what was important for my kids, right? George Washington, people will tell you that I was a perfect boy. They'll say he chopped down the cherry tree. But that cherry tree story isn't true. Like most boys back then, I liked swimming, fishing, and riding horses. I was a decent athlete, but nothing spectacular. Mostly I was an ordinary kid. I liked books and even liked to dance. I'll put it lower. That's right. George Washington loved to dance. In school, my best subject was math. I was pretty good at writing, but I was always a terrible speller. And this is important to my kids. I want my kids to know, all my kids and myself and my wife, we're all terrible spellers, right? And my daughter loves to dance. This is now George Washington comes alive. Now he's just like us. And his teacher tells him, you spelled beginning wrong. Couldn't spell beginning. At Harvest, too. And he says, don't you realize I'm going to be one of the world's best leaders? He says, I believe that almost as much as I believe you're a great dancer, right? We need to know George Washington isn't some dead guy on a dollar bill. He's just like us. He's a human being. He wasn't any better. He was just born. We're all born such similar ways. What we do with our lives is what makes us the heroes that we become. And I need my kids to learn that. That's what leadership's about, is leading the way and teaching them that. But remember when I said that it's hard to be the first? It's easier when there's someone showing you how it's done. And this is his brother Lawrence, right here. He was 14 years older than him, and no one had a bigger impact in George Washington's life. And he used to love seeing him in the uniform. He says, I loved hearing the stories of his adventures. Thanks to my brother, I knew I wanted to serve in the military. He loves that uniform. He thinks it's amazing. Now, here's what I didn't know about George Washington. Soon, though, I saw how uncertain life could be. When I was 11, my dad died. We couldn't afford proper schooling, so my brothers had to teach me at home. I didn't go to high school or college. George Washington, think about it, didn't go to high school or college. But I was committed to learning and building myself. And he says, you spelled it wrong. You know what George Washington says? Then I'll do it again. Now this, by the way, I'm not going to read you all the rules, but George Washington used to copy a book of virtues. There were 110 in all. He used to write them in a book, copy them down over and over. You know what number 11 was? Don't chew your nails. Number 12 was don't stand close to people because you spit on them. Still actually a good rule for your life. Number 100 is don't use a fork or a knife to clean your teeth. Use a toothpick. And the most important, though, was the first one. Every action done in company ought to be done with a sign of respect. Wouldn't it be great if in America today we could do things with a sign of respect to each other? And we need that, right? This is about what we need in America right now. And so when I turned 15, my mother told me I needed to get a job. Since I was good at math and precision, I became a surveyor, someone who explores large areas of land to find their boundaries. When I was 16, I went with a wealthy family called the Fairfaxes to survey the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Shenandoah Valley. There were no roads. The rain was fierce. And one night, a straw mat that he was sleeping on caught on fire. The next night was even harder. He says, but we kept going. Don't give up. Dee, I agree. I'm an amazing author. Thank you for telling me. Now, here's the page that I'm going to tell you. This is my favorite page in the entire book. Hit the heart section when you see Chris Eliopoulos' amazing art. Look at this page of art and show the heart button when you see Chris Eliopoulos' amazing art. There was something special in treading a new path. Something beautiful in doing what no one's done before. You know what George Washington stands for? He says, just being around the Fairfaxes changed my life. They helped me get work. I observed how they lived, how they dressed, and how they ate. I even learned to properly, you know what it is, people, dance. He really does love to dance, and that wasn't a joke. He was a great dancer. At the Fairfaxes, I ate with fine silver and beautiful china. But here's what I personally also love about George Washington. He can go with the Fairfaxes. He can be rich and famous and eat with nice china and all those things. But instead, he still goes home. At home, I ate with sticks at a fire. Right? It was as if I was living in two worlds, but to me, both were equally important. I teach my kids all the time, never forget where you come from. Never forget where you come from. He says, you know you can eat with the rich folks every night. Yes, I know, he says, right? Now again, give some love to Chris's amazing art. This is one of the great battle scenes. When I got older, I joined the military. In my first big battle, I was on the British side, fighting against the French and Native Americans. I was nearly shot 4 times. 4 musket balls ripped through his clothing, but nothing could stop me, he says. While others were screaming, I raced across the battlefield, keeping people calm. We lost the battle, but I became the commander of all of Virginia's fighting forces. At the age of 23, I ran for office to be a member of the House of the Virginia Legislature. I lost. That's right. He lost. George Washington doesn't win everything, he loses. He says, it didn't stop me. I tried again, and this time I won. In fact, I won re-election every time after that. But the world as I knew it was about to change. You know what this is, people. You know what's coming. Here comes it. He says, remember, when I was growing up, the United States didn't exist yet. Back then, there were no states, just colonies, all of them controlled by England. We were ruled by the British king named George III. He says, the king's unfair. He wants us to pay for everyday things like stamps and tea. We deserve to be free. You know what this is. Tell your kids right there. There's some tea being thrown in the water. And then he says, in April 1775, the first shots were fired in Massachusetts, in Lexington and Concord. It took 8 days for the news of this American Revolution to reach me. Are we going to let the colonists in Massachusetts fight alone, or are we going to join them? It was one of the biggest questions in history. The answer came at a meeting called the Second Continental Congress. Our 13 colonies decided we would fight together against King George III. All we needed was a leader for the battle. Guess who they chose? Some say it was because I was a natural leader. Some say it was simply because I was taller than everyone else. But let me tell you a secret. I was the only one wearing a military uniform. It's true. George Washington was the only one who came in a military uniform. It wasn't an accident. On that day, I came ready to lead, ready to do the job, ready to be first. Again, beautiful art by Chris. Give him some love. Was it easy to be in power? Never. Our side didn't have enough food, clothing, or weapons. Their side was well fed and well armed. Our side didn't have trained soldiers. We were farmers and fishermen. Their side was the greatest fighting force in the world. In the winter at Valley Forge, some of our troops didn't eat for days. They wore rags and had to go barefoot in the snow. That's true. Think about that. Now here's, again, one of my favorite parts. We debated with the editor about that. I said I want to include the fact that we were smarter because George Washington wrote in invisible ink. Isn't that cool, invisible ink? And his code name was 711, 711. And I was telling my son about that, and the editor was like, maybe we shouldn't put that in there. And I was like, are you kidding? And I read the book when I was reading with my son. And he's like, George Washington wrote in invisible ink? That's so cool. I'm like, I know, tell the editor. And then the other day, this is true, I was driving with my sons in the car, and my younger son said, you know, Dad, you should have put invisible ink in the book. And then when you do something to it, words appear. And I stopped the car, and I was like, that's the greatest idea I've ever heard. So I'm not saying there's not anything here, but I'm not saying there is not. Anyway, here we go. We were sneakier. We launched surprise raids, but this one way we crossed the Delaware River. That famous picture, this is what it looked like. But most important, we wouldn't give in. They were fighting for a king. We were fighting for a cause, for freedom. Also, let's not forget, we had a weapon they'd never have. We had General George Washington. After we beat the British Army, a new government was formed. I presided over the convention that wrote our Constitution, which created the new laws for our country. The brand new United States of America was free to explore its own future. Now all we needed was to pick our first president, someone brave, someone strong, someone trustworthy enough to handle all that power. Again, guess who they chose? And he says, you know, you're so popular, you could have made yourself the King of America. And he's like, yes, I know. And this is truly the most important lesson in the whole book. Because in this moment, George Washington's greatest moment and his most heroic act in my mind comes after we win the Revolutionary War. Because when that happens, he could have been the King of America. And King George says, what's he going to do? King George in England says, what's George Washington going to do? And they say to him, he's going to go back to his farm. And King George says, if he does that, he will be the greatest man in the world. And that's exactly what George Washington does. And he does it again after his second term. And that is his most heroic act to me. Instead of putting himself first, he puts his faith in our country. He puts his faith in us. In life, there are many ways to lead. You can be a quiet leader, a tough leader, a bold leader. But leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. When you're in a position of power, always look out for those who put their faith in you. And always forge your own road, because sometimes the most important trail is the one no one has ever taken before. When you do those things, you will clear a path that will lead the way for others. Now, I'm going to show you cool stuff that you can't do when you find your own book. Now, these are all the details about the president. Now, what does this look like right here? Oh, yeah. Look what that is. That's right. You know I'm in every book. You know who else is in every book? I'm not telling you, but there's people in every book. I'm going to tell you another secret about all the books. Every hero in each book is the hero for the next book we're doing, secretly hidden in there. There's also cool things that are hidden. And I'm not saying that Superman is hidden, but I'm also not saying that Superman isn't hidden. Leadership doesn't come from charisma or personality. It comes from courage. The courage to do what's right, the courage to serve others, the courage to go first. I am George Washington. Today they call me the father of our country. I have the courage to do what no one's done before. And that is I am George Washington. Let me show you something. These were his teeth. Totally gross. And again, for me, why I really love reading this book, what I hope it stands for is that we can all be leaders, right? That's the key message of this book, and that's what we need in our country right now, is we need leaders. I so love that all of you do these videos with us and stick around for story time. Brandy Colton, I'm glad you love it. Burke Kelly, I'm glad you love it. And Ginny, yes, the courage to do what's right. And yes, he's in there. And Jim Henson and Angie sees that. And I love that we get to share these with you. But again, share those moral lessons with your kids. That's the best leadership of all. That's the best leader in all their lives is never going to be a president in your kids' lives. The best leader is always going to be you. The people who tune in here and watch these videos and share these videos with others and say, you know what, this is what I want to stand for. Not the nonsense we see in the political arena today. I'm not going to do Jane Goodall tonight, but I do want to say this. Is Jane Goodall as a book is about seeing things in common, right? She sees these chimpanzees and realizes with them that they're so much like us. And in this world today where we're so divided, I felt like it was very important to write a book that focuses on what we have in common. That's what we really need today. And so think about that. You know, it's easy to point to our hands. And when I was at the book signing the other day, someone said to me, you know, why, and I do believe this, is, you know, we used to fight in America, the good guys fought the bad guys. And in our comics, the good guys fought the bad guys. And today, Batman fights Superman, and Iron Man fights Captain America. Our superheroes have always, always reflected our culture. That's how it's always going to be. But that's why we're in a culture war right now. There are bad guys still out there, but yet we take this time, even on 9/11, and we're still fighting each other. And to me, that's what we have to get past. And the only way we can do that is if we see how much we have in common with each other. So with that said, this is the end of this story time. I'll show you a little, who wants a sneak peek of I Am Jim Henson? Want a sneak peek of it? I'm going to show you a sneak peek. Here it comes. Here's page 1 of I Am Jim Henson, actually. Here's the inside. Oh, it's cute, right? It is awesome. And let me tell you that I Am Jim Henson, just so you hear this, it's the nerdiest book of all time. In fact, that's why it's the greatest book of all time, because I love Abraham Lincoln, and I love Amelia Earhart, and I love Albert Einstein, and I love all these heroes we've done, but none of them were truly my heroes growing up. I didn't have books like this growing up. My heroes growing up beside my grandfather were 2 men, and they were Mr. Rogers and this one, Jim Henson. And to me, you're going to see in this book, it's so much fun, and I love so much that we get to do it, because at the end of every book, I'll say to Chris, I'll say, you know what, we want to have Jane Goodall there and draw the chimpanzees and draw David Graybeard and make sure you have this one and have everyone in there. And when we got to I Am Jim Henson, I was like, you know what? I want everybody. Kermit, Miss Piggy, I want Fuzzy, I want Gonzo, I want everybody. I want Statler, I want Waldorf, Animal, I want Zoot, I want Ernie and Bert and Grover and Snuffleupagus. He's like, you want Sam the Eagle? I'm like, I want Sam the Eagle. I want Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. I want to have the Fraggle Rock. I want Doozers in this thing. I want everybody in this. So the last page of the book, without exaggeration, has 7,000 characters on it. It's the greatest page maybe of all time. It costs that much money to clear all the rights for it. I don't care if we don't make $1 on this book, but it is going to look so beautiful. Wait till you see it. Chris drew his heart out. This comes out in January. And again, also, thank you for everyone who bought a book on this first week of sales, because that's why we get to do this, because you buy them. That first week matters so much to the publishers. So if you're thinking of buying one or buying a birthday present for someone, please, George Washington, Jane Goodall, we really, really appreciate it. And please, please, please share this with your friends, share this with everyone. And I'll say this. So after I speak here tonight, we're going to go at 10:30 to our adult side of things, and we're going to be doing the 9/11 flag. And this has been the craziest week of my life, that I get to be launching these beautiful books and then also be talking about the return of the 9/11 flag. And needless to say, we had no idea when we picked this book tour that was all going to happen this week. We had no idea it was all going to fall out like this, but in a strange way, it seems so appropriate to have this and the real flag there, and a perfect time to talk about true heroes, not just George Washington, but those firefighters, but those first responders, and our entire team who helped bring this flag back, the amazing people in Everett, Washington. So you're going to hear the story. I'm going to wrap this up. I know it's going long, but I just feel like there's so much to talk about. And you'll see, for those who don't know, that we did this show called Lost History, where we asked for the return of the American flag that the firefighters raised at Ground Zero in that famous photograph. And what no one knew, and for 2 years almost I've been keeping it a secret, is that 4 days after the show aired, after I went on TV and said, please, if you know where that flag is, bring it back, we'll give you a $10,000 reward. 4 days later, a former Marine walks into a fire station in Washington State and in Everett, Washington, and says, I saw the show Lost History, and I need to bring this back. Here's the flag from 9/11. And we've spent the better part of 2 years working with authorities and our own investigators authenticating the flag. The flag got authenticated last week, as you know, and especially if you follow us here. And the best part was when 2 days ago, I got to go to the 9/11 Museum and unveil that flag with our amazing team and all the amazing people at the museum. And I say this because if you're watching Storytime, take your kids and your nieces and your nephews to the 9/11 Museum. Show them proof that real heroes exist in this world. Thank you for coming to Storytime. Thank you for bringing your kids with us and for posting great pictures of your kids. Brandy Colton, you are the awesome one. And so are you, Angie, and so are all of you who are leaving comments, and I'm reading them as you go. Thanks for joining us on Storytime, and we will see you soon.